And welcome back for another episode of Water Guy Unfiltered. I'm Paul.
I'm Ethan.
We're going to be doing water again today, like we have been many episodes prior. How's everybody been? How have you been, Ethan? It's been a while.
Yeah, man. It's been a while, and it's been nuts. I mean, I already told you I was violently ill for 3 days. Average temperature of 100.8.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty high.
That's like brain damage high.
It got to a point. I went to urgent care, and they were like, yeah, that's the flu. Just don't go out, drink some water, and sleep. I'm like, cool, I'll keep doing that. And then I was better a couple days later. So
100.8. I'm trying to imagine. I had a really high fever a long time ago. Maybe that explains some of my slow moments here. But you're already covered now, so if you have a slow moment during the episode, we're going to chalk it up to a little bit of fever last week.
yeah, it's a little residual.
So
How have you been, Paul?
I've been healthy as a horse.
There you go.
Kind of funny, knock on wood. We were just talking. I have been going to the gym for now almost a year and a half straight. I have not missed any gym time, which means I haven't been sick.
That's good.
Yeah, well, I felt there was like maybe 2 days where I wasn't feeling like the hottest.
Right.
But literally, it wasn't even enough to really impact the workout.
Yeah.
And it's been probably several years.
Yeah.
And it's actually, this is good small talk intro right now, but it's funny because this is going to lead in perfectly with exactly what today's topic is. So, here in the office, we use these, my prior days before water treatment, I had a lot of involvement with HVAC and indoor air quality and stuff like that.
Right.
So I got exposed to a lot of different weird stuff that was out there through one of the largest home improvement stores in the country that has a lot of orange on it. But it was kind of funny because I was the captain at one point of HVAC for the region. So it was my obligation to kind of seek out who was doing things really, really unique and better and try to steal what they were doing and bring it back to our area so that we could share the success.
There we go.
So there was this company, they were out of Florida, and I'm kind of a sciencey background guy. And they were rolling out this new product. And everybody, if you've got a central air or central heating in your house, a lot of people have heard about, a UV light in there to help with your air quality, like zapping pathogens. Well, they came in and they had something kind of like that, but instead of a UV light, this actually used ultraviolet energy to create peroxide.
Okay.
Gaseous peroxide. And this you would go in the air handler of your HVAC unit. So I'm trying to compare this. This is kind of like if you were driving your car, everything that your headlights show up on, like everything that they illuminate, you're able to see and zap. But with this other stuff, everything behind you is also being zapped.
Oh.
Because it has lingering. It's got, lasting effect. It's basically like it's letting off a gas instead of shooting a laser beam.
Gotcha.
So the gas gets out and it gets into all the little nooks and crannies and gets into the home.
So that would be like driving with your headlights, but residual light stays behind you.
Yeah. It's kind of like, we could go into a million different analogies on that one, but yeah, it was actually called line of sight treatment.
Okay.
To active filtration. So it was actually going out in the environment, getting into the house, getting into the ductwork, and all those areas that you can't shine a light. And it was actually using this peroxide, which is H2O2, but it's gas. it was using this to go ahead and oxidize and kind of kill odors and bacteria and viruses and mold and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, we're talking, man, that's probably been 13 years ago. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah.
But we actually, I got the chance to fly down and kind of check out their factory and talk with the engineer. Yeah, that was actually really, really cool. They had a sneeze test, like this big glass chamber. It was down in Florida.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to remember where the heck it was. I want to say it was like Pensacola or something like that. I'd have to look it up, but it was down where Tiger Woods is. Was. I don't know where he is now. Who cares? But but it was funny because they were on the water, and I remember that because they were like, yeah, that's Tiger Woods' yacht. So
okay,
yeah, that's why I remember Tiger Woods was down there. So wherever that was at the time, that was where they were based at. But they had this absolutely gorgeous facility. The guy down there was the founder and inventor. He's a nuclear engineer.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, this guy he looked odd. I shouldn't say that, but
he looked like a nuclear engineer.
He looked like a nuclear engineer. He was kind of red faced. Like okay. you're thinking everybody was looking at him going, "Oh, he's been around radiation a little too much."
Yeah.
But he was one of those like geniuses. So he created the company and literally that's what he built that whole thing on. But it wasn't one of those fly by night sketchy scammy things.
Right.
But they actually did a sneeze test. And they had this chamber that had been acclimated with the peroxide for a certain amount of time, and they had like these collection screens at different distances away from the sneezing person, and they would basically bring like a live cough or a live sneeze with bacteria and viruses in it, and it was poof, they'd blow it out there. And you could see, like, it would analyze how fast it was traveling. And I'm trying to remember what the numbers were, but long story short, by the time it had gone 3 feet, the peroxide in the air had neutralized like 97% of all the viruses. So I was like, oh, well, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So we actually offer that stuff here as part of our indoor air quality side of the business. And we have one of those units running our air handler.
Nice.
So I like to think that was part of the reason why it's been a year and a half and I really haven't been sick.
Yeah.
And at this point, we've got 10 people in and out of this office.
Right. It's a lot of...
A lot of people, a lot of sickness.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have never, knock on wood here, we've never transferred anything. Like nobody's come in here sick. And then next thing you know, it's kind of like all of a sudden everybody starts getting sick. We have never had that.
Wow.
If it comes in here, it stays. Whoever has it keeps it, and they leave because our air is not. You got to be a little bit of precaution. But yeah, we've had. I can say it now without people freaking out, but we've had COVID in here several times, and it stays isolated.
Right.
So I know this stuff works. The field tests, all the data shows it, and we've actually real world tested it. But how is that related to today's show?
How?
Well, hydrogen peroxide, the way that's made is basically it's an oxygen a molecule that gets created, and it kind of piggybacks on the humidity that was in the air. And creates the H2O2, which is the peroxide molecule.
Right.
Well, it's very similar technology because it uses an ultraviolet radiation, like a UV bulb, and a special cage with this metal coating on it, and it creates these free radicals. A lot of people have heard about something called ozone. We have the ozone layer.
Yep.
And today's whole episode is going to be about ozone. So,
all right, taking me back to 8th grade, man.
Taking you back.
Awesome.
So now you can kind of see that you're being sick was the perfect intro to peroxide, which is related to ozone.
It came in handy.
It sure did. We didn't even plan that, and you had no idea what today's topic was until
sure did not.
Right before we started. So, ozone is a very interesting thing.
Mm.
We use it a lot in our water treatment. It's one of those things that we use it. We knew the basics of how to work with it, things to look out for, things that we have to modify in order to not have any unpleasant surprises down the road. But we really didn't know the history behind it.
Right.
So this gives us the chance to really kind of dig in and really see how it's come along, and it's pretty interesting because. Have you ever been outside on one of those spring rainy days when the lightning is hitting?
Mm-hmm.
That smell that you smell, it's like a fresh. It's hard to explain, but you know it when you smell it.
Oh yeah.
That's ozone.
Okay.
That is actually ozone gas.
Interesting.
Yep. And it's kind of funny because it's very similar to how the peroxide smells.
Okay.
They took the peroxide thing home.
Boo.
Yes, because right now. Stacy's kids are battling what you had.
Oh no.
And you just passed her. So,
hey.
But she's protected, you're protected. So, and you've already had whatever it was. You couldn't have given it to us. But anyway, if I had that thing here, I could turn it on and you would absolutely recognize that smell as being like a fresh spring day with a lightning strike.
Yeah.
But that's what ozone, that's really how the ozone down at the ground level is created.
Okay.
And it's interesting because there's a place called the Catatumbo Lightning in Venezuela. It's actually the major regenerator of the planet's ozone layer. Because lightning doesn't necessarily just, not all, there's ground to cloud, cloud to ground, cloud to cloud. But basically a lot of it is up high. So according to what we dug up here, this place down in Venezuela, it's this like region where for some reason there's just so much friggin' lightning that it's just nonstop almost all the time. So have you seen that like on Discovery?
No.
I've seen this years ago, and it's all coming back to me on that's what that was. But that region, you're gonna love this. 1.176 million lightning bolts a year.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, we're talking all the time.
That's crazy.
There's lightning. So if you want to go somewhere and really check out some lightning, go down to the Catatumbo lightning area in Venezuela. That area alone, they say, produces 10% of the Earth's ozone layer. Just right there.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of a cool little factoid.
Yeah, getting some cool science stuff today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're thinking, so ozone is made from lightning. Not really only from lightning, but lightning is a huge piece of how this stuff is created.
Okay.
So there's some. I'm trying to think here the best way that I can describe this. There's lightning, and then there's UV. So on the ground, or you got the troposphere, and you got the stratosphere. So the troposphere is down near the ground. The stratosphere is way up there. The stratosphere is where the ozone layer is. Do you know what the ozone layer does for us?
It helps kind of filter UV light, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see, he's a genius. He had no idea. He gives me that look like, oh gosh, you put me on the spot again. But no, you are dead on. It's exactly what it does. It's basically a filter for the UV, because there's a lot of UV radiation coming from outside Earth.
Oh yeah.
And if we don't have the ozone layer, it basically does real bad things if too much of that radiation gets down to Earth.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, we need some UV because plants and everything that has photosynthesis. God, I can't even freaking talk. They rely on that to be able to make their sugars and to grow. But too much of that, and we all get sunburn and die.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have the ozone layer. And like I said, 10% of that is produced down there in Venezuela. But it's interesting because the ozone is created not just from lightning strikes, but from UV radiation itself. So
interesting.
So there's UV lights like we were talking about, you could stick the lights in there, and it zaps whatever it can see. A couple episodes ago, we were talking about UV sterilization for water. That's how we were taking care of pathogens here in Richmond during the no water and the boil water times. But it's the UV actually will react with the oxygen molecules by themselves and cause them to split and form, instead of O2, they will be just single O's, and then they'll instantly bond. The single O's don't like being by themselves, so they'll piggyback onto another oxygen, and now you've got O3.
Right.
O3 is it is an allotrope. You know what an allotrope is? Mm-mm. I didn't either. I was like, what the heck is an allotrope? So an allotrope is a behavior exhibited by certain chemical elements that can exist in two or more different forms, known as allotropes of that element. And then in each allotrope, the element's atoms are bonded together in a different manner. So it basically is a fancy way for saying that oxygen can exist as O2 or O3. Now, O3, ozone, is not a very stable. It's not a very stable thing. It lives about 22 minutes. Then it breaks up.
Okay. That's
a short relationship.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yep. I may have had one shorter than that, but yeah, that was. It doesn't live very long, and it makes it even more interesting because when you're up there in the stratosphere, you've got all this UV radiation pounding down on you, making the ozone. But this UV radiation also causes the ozone to start to break down immediately. So when it breaks down, it forms hydroxyl radicals, these oxidizers. The thing about those is they have a half-life of microseconds. So once they break down, it's like poof, gone. They're in a second, they're pretty much over with. And then they break down into oxygen again. And then this single oxygen grabs a hold of the other single oxygen, becomes O2, and this whole process just keeps going around and around.
Cycle.
That's the cycle. Yep. So why is that important? Well, because ozone is very important to keep the Earth protected, but it's also one of those things that throughout history, and I had no idea the importance of ozone. This stuff has been around since, let's see, there was an actual, here it is right here. Ozone officially was discovered in 1785 by a Dutch physicist named Martinus van Marum. And this is what's interesting about Martinus van Marum. So he was born in 1750. That's a long damn time ago.
Yeah.
And I almost missed this when I was kind of doing the research on it. He died in 1837. I'm like, okay. I caught that. I was like, that's a long time.
Yeah.
This guy was born in the mid-1700s and almost made it to the mid-1800s.
Yeah.
87 years old.
For that time, that's
insane.
A good lifespan.
Yeah, you always think that, we're outliving all of our ancestors.
Right.
I'm starting to think that maybe they had some stuff figured out. It goes to show you that before we polluted and destroyed the planet in other ways, it wasn't that bad on lifespan. We didn't have any medicines. We had limited medicines. But you got this guy, he lived 87 years old. With literally, there was nothing, there was no medicine, so to speak, that like we would consider it now.
Right.
So, but anyway, he was the actual discoverer of ozone. So that was almost 240 years, exactly 240 years ago. So stuff wasn't just found out. It was found out quite a while ago. And pretty much he figured out that was a thing. And then in 1840, right after he died, there was a German chemist, Christian Friedrich Schonbein, and he was 69 years old when he died. Another pretty long. He was born in 1799 to 1868. He lived a decent amount. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that actually made ozone. So Martinez figured out that it's a thing, and then Christian Friedrich Schonbein actually is able to make it in 1840. And then the rest gets kind of crazy. 1857, Werner von Siemens built the first superior induction tube. And he was using this stuff to destroy microorganisms and was playing around with, some benefits for this. And then in 1870, there was a German doctor, Dr. Lender. He made the first publication on practical effects related to water disinfection. So he kind of like put this stuff in writing that we figured out that ozone is probably something that we can use to make bad things die. So I know it's so exciting. They realized early on that ozone had some antimicrobial properties, and this was way 70 years before penicillin was even invented.
Right.
So they didn't have even what we would consider to be the basics, but they're like, hey, we got this cool thing called ozone, and this was in the late 1800s at this time, and they were using it as a purifier of the blood. I don't know how they did that. I didn't get too deep into that actual process, but I'm trying to imagine how you would introduce ozone into the blood. Right. But they had some, they had to experiment around and do some crazy stuff. But like I was saying, they in the late 1800s they did realize the ability of this stuff for eliminating the microorganisms, and there was a book that a Dr. Kellogg wrote in 1881. He wrote a book on diphtheria, and that book kind of gets popular, gets over here to North America, and then the Florida Medical Association published the first textbook on medical applications of ozone. So this is 1885. So we're still a long doggone time ago, back in the late 1800s, and they're already like, all right, we got this stuff is great. But yeah, it had a big history in the medical side of things. So I thought that was pretty interesting. 1893, in the Netherlands, a place called Oostbaden, I hope I pronounced that right, they created the first facility for disinfection and purification of water that was meant for human consumption and waste. And basically so the Netherlands were cutting edge on this way back then, before the 1900s even hit.
Yeah, they've been killing it.
And they have, latest data says that they have more than 3,000 water treatment plants that use ozone still in the country. So
Still.
Wow. To this date. Exactly right. So Zurich, Florence, and other cities have been acquiring systems to disinfect water, and ozone really started taking off as a water treatment method over there. So that was 125 years ago, roughly. So here we are. We figured out ozone is a good thing. They're trying to come up with other uses for it. And then in 1940, and for those of you that are trying to remember what really happened back in 1940, World War II.
Yeah. So
first it was World War I back in the teens, and then it was 1940 when the next real milestone happened. And the FDA here in America decided that they were, besides all of the usefulness for being a healing method of infectious diseases, they decided that they wanted to go ahead and start shutting it down here in America. And interesting, yeah. So they literally, in 1940, they began sealing off the medical ozone generators and promoting their own pharmaceutical industry.
Big Pharma.
Big Pharma
Even back
goes
then.
back to 1940.
Even back then. Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of
What a shame.
exactly right. It's really interesting. I was sometimes doing the research. You get sucked down a rabbit hole or two. This episode that we did, I got sucked down way deep into this one because I was like, "What? What do you mean? What really happened in 1940 that would have caused all this weird shift in how we treat this stuff?" And the answer is that we had recently acquired not in 1940, but shortly thereafter, within the next 5 years, we had acquired a pharmaceutical company that you may know the name, Bayer. Bayer.
Yep.
With the cross, with the Y in the middle of the cross. So Bayer was a German company. I didn't realize that. I didn't really know the history behind it. But Bayer was started out as a really interesting company over there in Germany, and they were very cutting edge. I mean, they were coming up with some of the evil stuff. I hate to say, World War One, the Germans were not our friends.
Oh yeah.
World War II, they definitely were not our friends.
Yeah.
And as early as in World War I, they were coming up with, I believe Bayer Company was the company that was producing there were these rounds, these ammunition rounds that they were lobbing, the Germans were using, that I believe was letting off chlorine gas. So Bayer was actually the one behind all that.
The spear point of chemical warfare in World War I.
I hate to say that they were cutting edge chemical warfare. They were the chemical company that people were like, oh my gosh. So they had grown, and they were good at what they did.
Yeah.
And they had actually spread out to become a multinational company. So after the Second World War, obviously everybody wanted to beat the hell out of Germany and punish them for all the atrocities. So one of the things that happened was that because Bayer was involved, I know this is going to get me a lot of hate mail for even bringing it up. They were involved in a lot of human testing in Germany, where a lot of bad stuff happened. Mm-hmm. And there were articles of like some orders, like some telegraphed orders of, hey, the entire batch of women that we ordered all died during the process. We need another batch at the same price. I mean, it was just horrible things that I was reading. I was like, oh my gosh.
Very non-inhumane, like very inhumane stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. They were just cold, just determined to figure things out. And there was nothing human about them at that point. But anyway, they ended up getting all broken up after World War II. Mm-hmm. And the U.S. actually took over all of the Bayer company and assets over here in America. So that really goes hand in hand with the FDA saying, now we've got a really big chemical company, pharmaceutical company. We're going to go ahead and start pushing our own version of medical care. So it does kind of make sense. But I got to say this. So while I was going down that rabbit hole, I was reading about all the crazy stuff that Bayer did.
Right.
And they did some bad things, like one of the main ingredients in the gas chambers that they were using came from Bayer. But some good things came out of Bayer. Aspirin. So they didn't invent the aspirin. They did invent aspirin, but they didn't invent like the base to it.
Right.
They took what the heck was that stuff called? Doesn't matter. But basically, there's the raw part of aspirin came from willow bark, and they took this stuff and they were basically able to artificially create this, and they made aspirin. And aspirin, of course, has prevented all sorts of heart attack fatalities and things like that. It's the one thing that you want to take if you think you're having a heart attack. But they also did some other crazy stuff. I saw this picture, and it was this little bottle, and it had Bayer, all logoed up and everything, and right on the front of it, I can't show you because I left my phone in there. Right on the front of it, it said heroin. Oh, I was like, what? This is the craziest thing ever. So I think it was for 12 years they marketed heroin.
Or medically prescribing heroin.
Yes, in a bottle.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It was the craziest thing, and what I was able to dig into was that they didn't invent heroin, so you can't blame Bayer for inventing heroin, but they were the first to commercialize it. So they actually put it in a bottle with it said heroin right on it. It just cracks me up when I see that. Could you imagine seeing that now, like on a shelf in Walmart?
On the shelf.
Get some heroin. Yeah, they were using that for, what was it, coughing? It was a cough medicine. They were using it for pneumonia and tuberculosis. So, and actually TB was like a big deal back then. So I'm sure they had just a booming business. But anyway, yeah, so Bayer did just about everything from military contracts to aspirin to heroin. So, when that seems like a good time to go ahead and take a break so I can take a breath. But we got some new sponsors, and we're going to be back in just a second. Hi, I'm Paul, host of Water Guy Unfiltered. If you're looking for fun topics like landfill juice and the history of coffee mixed in with things like haloacetic acids and the forever chemical PFAS, you've come to the right place. Check out Water Guy Unfiltered and learn the raw truth about water stuff, where it's educational and informative with a shot of humor just to keep it fun. We started as a weekly radio show, and now we're podcasted everywhere. Join us. All right, and we're really back this time.
A little bit of a technological error.
Little glitch. It'll be maybe edited out, but it's kind of fun to keep those in there. But
anyway, so heroin. Yes.
We were talking about Bayer and all the crazy stuff that they did, and I went out and I dug up the picture, and I can't even look at that picture without laughing. I shouldn't laugh about heroin, but it's the image of it. It makes it look so happy and innocent,
and just normal.
Just normal.
Yeah.
It's like if you're gonna go get a cough drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me go get a heroin. It's crazy. This little bottle. It's bizarre, and it's all in German on the picture.
People are just microdosing heroin.
Yes.
That's nuts.
Using it for coughs, which actually what is it, codeine? Mm-hmm. They put that in the cough suppressants.
Yeah.
Because it helps you with coughs.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. Okay. So back on track here. Less Germany and more Nikola Tesla.
Oh, Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla. You probably heard that name before.
Oh, yeah.
Probably seen a lot of cars with his name driving around. So Nikola Tesla, and this was an interesting factoid. He was a U.S. citizen. For some reason, I thought he was European. Like, I didn't think he was actually a U.S. person.
Right.
I just knew he was a crazy inventor. I just didn't know he was actually a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
He was actually Croatian.
Mm-hmm.
So he emigrated to the U.S. and became a U.S. citizen. And thank goodness he did, because we have a whole bunch of things that we wouldn't have probably hit the same speed of achievement if it wasn't for him.
Mm-hmm.
But back in 1896, he patented his first ozone generator. And in 1900, 4 years later, he founded Nikola Tesla Ozone Company, manufacturer of generators for medical use.
What a good guy.
Yeah, I never even had heard of this until doing all this digging. But he was the first person to ozonate olive oil. I wouldn't have even thought that you wanted to ozonate olive oil.
Neither would I have.
But yeah, he was like the first to get in on, let's go ahead and make some equipment for this. Well, anybody that messes around with ozone, like us, we have learned, sometimes the hard way, that not all materials really like ozone. So ozone is a vicious, it likes to kill things, including plastics and rubber. So they have to have special plastics that are actually resistant to ozone. And that really was, didn't have a lot of plastics in the early 1900s, but the mid 1900s is when plastics really started to take off. Chemicals will improve your life, or the better life through chemicals, or something like that. That was like the logo. But anyway, in 1957, due to the fact that they had finally come up with some plastics that were resistant to ozone, this German physician, Dr. Hansler, hope I pronounced that right, he actually manufactured the first modern ozone generator. So Tesla made the first one, and Dr. Hansler made the first modern one that was able to handle, use plastics and stuff like that. So that was in 1957. Nikola Tesla. How old was Nikola Tesla? He was born in 1856, died in 1943.
Another long liver.
Another one, he almost hit 90 years old.
Yeah.
So that's makes you go, A lot of these jokers are living to 90.
A lot of these guys messing with ozone, at least.
Yeah, who knows what. Yeah, they were probably, well, we know they weren't exposed to all the crazy stuff that we see now, but yeah, that's just crazy. Three, they're all 70 plus. Back when I just assumed that the lifespan was probably like 55, 60 or worse. But anyway, fast forward to 1911. Dr. Noble Eberhardt, not two Ebers, just that was me stuttering. Noble Eberhardt, head of Department of Physiology of Loyola Chicago University. He actually wrote this book, The Manual in High Frequency Operation, and stated that he used ozone to treat tuberculosis, anemia, chlorosis, tinnitus, whooping cough, asthma, bronchitis, hay fever, insomnia, pneumonia, diabetes, gout, and my all-time favorite thing, syphilis.
Oh boy.
So
it's your favorite?
It's my favorite thing because I've never had syphilis that I know of. But do you know a famous person that died because of syphilis?
Oh, geez.
You know it, but you just can't think of his name.
Yep.
So for this is one of those, just pulled it out. As soon as I was reading this, I turned to Stacy. I was like, Al Capone.
Yes, it was Al Capone. That's right.
Yep, Al Capone got taken out by syphilis.
Yep.
So that's why I say it's one of my favorite things, because I get to spout out that little nugget of knowledge. And it's a weird nugget of knowledge, but it's still true. And so anyway, this doctor created the first university teaching center that was just dedicated, with a lot of other things, but to ozone therapy. And that was back in 1911. Yep, up there in Chicago. So it's starting to get a little bit more popular, but then the FDA shuts it down in 1940, and then since then it's been big pharma. And that's pretty much the history of ozone being used for medical here in the U.S. So you're probably thinking, all right, well, what other weird things can we talk about with ozone? And there's different methods of making ozone. So it's actually, you can get it naturally, like we talked about with waiting for lightning and just try to bottle that stuff up, but you only got 22 minutes. So you might not be that effective. So that method is the UV method, where basically, like we said, ultraviolet radiation is causing the oxygen to split and become O3 temporarily, but the continued exposure to radiation, the UV, is causing it to break down almost immediately into its hydroxyl radicals, and those have a half-life of microseconds. So that's the big cycle that typically happens way up in the stratosphere. Now, there's another, it's actually, the stratosphere is the sun beating down and causing that. Down more near Earth, but up high when the lightning is up up in the clouds, that method is actually called a corona discharge method. So instead of using ultraviolet light, you're using electrical energy to go ahead and basically blow the O2 apart and cause it to basically grab other oxygens. And then O2 plus another one is an O3. Then you got, that's kind of how that's made. Yeah. But that's called corona discharge. So I found out about this probably 2 years ago now. There was a bottling company, a water bottle company down in Williamsburg, and they called me in because they got some reverse osmosis. It's kind of funny. They sell spring water, but they also sell purified water. And they do those big, the 3 and 5 gallon jugs, and they literally truck them out and stock coolers with them. So since I won't say their name, I'll say the spring water is exactly what we talked about on the other episode. Do you think they have a spring in the backyard that's untouched and fenced off and completely sterile?
Of course they do.
Yes, of course they do.
Absolutely.
They have a little room with a well in it, a deep well, and it pumps the water in, and that's your spring water. Huh. So I joke around, and I used to joke around with customers. I'm like, yeah, the spring water you're paying all this money for, it's just some dude with a well, with a bottling company. And then I ran into a bottling company with a well, and it absolutely proved that I was right.
Yep.
So they got their customers that love the idea of spring water. And then they have their customers that value the idea of purified water. So they're, in either case, before these things basically get filled into these jugs, they dose them with ozone. And they called me in there because it was a new owner, and they were trying to get up to speed on what in the heck some of this technology was that was already in the bottle room. And I walked in there, and I'm looking at this, and I'm going, I have never seen one of these. I've never heard of this brand. So I'm never gonna BS anybody. I'm gonna get the details. I'm gonna do the research on it, find out exactly what's going on, and then we can come up with a good plan. So in doing my research, I was like, oh, they're dosing it with ozone. Well, we've been using ozone here for this location as long as we've been open, like 10 years. So we're really familiar with ours. But our method, we use the ultraviolet light, and it's a constant low dose. And this other one, I actually called my ozone company up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at this other stuff, and apparently they're discontinued. So can we retrofit this and use one of our current systems? And he was like, oh, no, they use corona discharge. And at the time I was like, I don't know what that means. Just tell me yes or no.
Right.
So he said, corona discharge it's like lightning. Basically, it's using the spark to go ahead and blow the oxygens apart. It's a much more intense reaction. You get a lot more ozone out of it, but you can't maintain it because it takes a whole bunch of energy to do. It's kind of like you go bzz, bzz, it's only when you're filling the bottles. So anyway, that's the corona discharge. That's what they had as they were filling the bottle. This thing was kind of like jamming high doses into it, and it doesn't live very long, but it's at, I think the life of that, by the time it made it into the bottle, I think it was effective for 3 minutes. So it gave them time to go ahead, put it into the water, fill the bottle up, cap the bottle, and then everything kind of self-cleans or self-sanitizes. And then at least it's safe when you send it out from pathogens, at least. So anyway, that was my first experience with Corona discharge. So it was a system that, let's just say, it was pretty complicated and problematic. But ozone it's not a friendly thing. I laugh, but I shouldn't laugh. Our systems, usually when we're using ozone, we're doing atmospheric tanks, and we have a diffuser down near the bottom of the tank. And this diffuser, if you've ever had an aquarium, it's like an air stone. You've seen the little bubbles coming out of the air stone, keeping the fish alive. It's kind of like that. We push ozone in, and it goes all the way down to a diffuser at the bottom. And this curtain of bubbles that comes up slowly gets dissolved into the water on its way up. But the most important thing is that this curtain of bubbles creates like a current, kind of like if you were to start a fire in a fireplace. You open up the chimney, open up the flue, and as soon as the heat starts to go up there, it starts to suck the smoke and everything up with it. Yeah. So that's effectively what we end up doing in these tanks. We create a curtain of ozone. The ozone rises up, and it kind of pulls the water down. It's on the sides of the tank and refills this kind of like a vent, so to speak. So it's keeping the whole tank constantly just churning. Hope that makes sense. But once it's had a chance to acclimate with the water in there usually we like to see it in there for a good 2 days before we start drawing water out of it. And then it's able to maintain what you're pulling out versus what you're putting in there, because it's already acclimated. But yeah, that's a much different way to do it. But this particular tank, I had to do an adjustment on the. This was 3 days ago. I still remember it like it was yesterday. The doggone the inlet valve, for some reason, got misaligned and it was stuck. So I had to go down there because this thing was overflowing out of the vent hole outside into the yard, which isn't terrible. It's awesome. The grass loves it. But obviously, no customer doesn't like the fact that they're dumping pure water out into the yard nonstop. Right. So I opened up the top of this thing. Stupid me. I knew better, but I was in a hurry. And I dunked my head down in the tank to look and see what was going on. And I accidentally took a breath in. Oh my gosh. I thought I was going to die. The ozone, when it's in that tank, it will it'll mess you up. Mm-hmm. I was a little lightheaded for a while, and it was kind of funny because I had a sweatshirt on, and I had to reach in and do this adjustment on this tank, and just from being in there for probably less than 5 minutes, my hand and my sweatshirt, you could smell the ozone for the rest of the day.
Wow!
I even got back. I was like, "Oh, smell my hands," and they know better than to smell my hands when I come back from something, and I go, "Hey, smell my hand." That's never good. But yeah, so ozone is not one of those things you just want to sit there and you want to smell.
Right.
It actually has it's got a good smell, like the rain with the lightning. Yeah. It's one of those. It can be overpowering, but it's also refreshing, and it smells clean. I guess that's the best way that I could describe it. Is it just smells clean. But bugs don't like it. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, nothing likes ozone because it's very effective at killing them. So, so we use it all the time. It's used in a lot of industrial and commercial applications. Most of those are all using that corona discharge because of the high dosing that they're trying to achieve. It's just kind of what they need to be able to instantaneously dose a bottle and then have it, as its half-life is expiring, have it do its magic. But yeah, kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. the UV method. I couldn't think of the name the other minute, but it's called the ultraviolet radiation method. Kind of makes sense. And for those of you that really want to nerd out, there is a spectrum of radiation. Most UV ozone generators use about 454 nanometers radiation. Apparently, the maximum production of ozone happens at between 260 and 265. So, if you're thinking of making one of these things at home, try to stick to 260 to 265 nanometers. So, just a little factoid to throw out there. But apparently you can make it at home because Tesla made one way back in the late 1800s, so it can't be that doggone hard.
He can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, I mean, heck, we've got Amazon. We can order just about any part we need.
Yeah.
And you could probably specialize in ozone-resistant plastics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I already talked about the microseconds of the free radicals compared to 22-minute life of ozone. It's amazing it can live that long, but it kind of makes sense depending on the application that you kind of want to know how long this stuff's going to live.
Yeah.
There is one more method of making. It's kind of similar to the lightning type method, but it's called the electrolytic. And you can produce ozone directly in water instead of in the air using electrolytic ozone generators. And it's kind of it's a unique concept because what's water made of? H2O. Yeah. You're trying to make O3. So you've already got all your ingredients already in the water. So what they end up doing is they'll have an anode and a cathode in there, and I always forget which one is which. I think the negative one is the one that creates the hydrogen. Mm-hmm. So what they end up doing is they put a negative one in there, they create the hydrogen, they separate the hydrogen so that it's basically the hydrogen that's been removed. They can't remove all of it, obviously, because then you wouldn't have water anymore. But the hydrogen that gets removed means you've got more oxygen available. And then they hit the oxygen-laden water with the opposite electrode, and then they create the oxygen. They basically break it apart and cause it to kind of form onto another O3, if that makes sense.
Right.
So you're getting rid of your hydrogen, the remaining O's, you're going to go ahead and make them clump together, and that's the electrolytic method. The advantages of this method: it's produced directly in the water. You don't have all this extra equipment trying to reintroduce it. There's no off-gassing. It's pretty compact. The big disadvantage is that it is ridiculously energy consuming, as you might imagine. And the anode and cathode that are used to go ahead and make all this magic happen, they don't live very long because they're just constantly being beaten to death.
You got a short lifespan then.
Short lifespan. Exactly right. So I talked about the hydroxyl radicals, which is, it's not a group. It's actually just these, what happens when primarily when the UV radiation continues to break down the ozone. And really, it's kind of funny because this wasn't something that was really readily understood until the 1970s, 1980s. So it's relatively recent in terms of, what the decomposition of it is really, what's going on with all that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they're still finding stuff out, no matter how much you think you know. There were some little factoids on the effectiveness of killing all sorts of terrible things that you might find in your food and water. Like E. coli, everybody's heard of Escherichia coli, E. coli for short, because nobody can say that first word. 99.999% effective. So,
wow.
Yes, it is. This is no joke. This is actually the good thing. I've got a whole list here, probably like 12 different things. Aspergillus, Listeria, Pseudomonas, Salmonella, Staphylococcus, mentagrophytes, Trichophyton mentagrophytes. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds terrifying.
It's a lot of syllables is what that is.
That is the longest thing that it kills on this short list, and it's 99.9999%. So it's pretty much wiped out. Yeah, this isn't like some snake oil remedy. This stuff actually works.
Yeah.
The only problem really with consistent usage is it's sometimes hard to control the dose. So there's a lot of factors that can go into that, temperature of the water and how new your equipment is and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that the U.S. does not really like it as a reliable method. So there's very few places though here in America that are actually using it for water treatment, but they do use it for, let's see here. There it is, food and beverage. All right. So since 2001, the FDA formally approved the use of ozone as an antimicrobial agent for the treatment, storage, and processing of foods in gas and aqueous phases. So, since June 26, 2001, it has been officially blessed that food places can actually use this. Because some of those things that I read off, like E. coli and Salmonella, those are bad. Those come out and people die and companies get sued over that.
Oh, yeah.
So, what they're found is that, a lot of this stuff is it's open air. So, if you can expose like all these vegetables that were out in the field and you got this whole army of vegetable pickers and this one porta-john in the middle of the field, and it's not like they've got a way to sanitize their hands after they use the porta-john. They go right back to picking vegetables.
Right.
So this would make me feel a lot better knowing that I know, you can't wash every nook and cranny of the strawberry, but if they can dose the strawberries in gas, like an ozone gas, it can kill a lot of that stuff. So, it's actually a pretty unique, it's a unique way to approach it, because some of them you can't get wet. Once you get a mushroom wet, for example, they're done.
Yeah.
They start to go mush and slime, which is interesting because the company that I was talking about at the beginning with the HVAC, when I was down there, they had their own yacht. I tried to not bring that part up. But they used this yacht as a selling feature because the whole yacht was completely outfitted with these things. The kitchen, the engine room, and a yacht. If you've ever been on a really big yacht, I don't even know how many. This thing was, oh my gosh, 150 feet.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this was a really, really big yacht. And you could go in anywhere and you could not smell anything wrong. Like, you go in the engine room, you didn't smell oil, you didn't smell gas. It just smelled clean. And that's because these things were like in operation and they were constantly scrubbing the air. So you came out of there like, oh my gosh, this is the healthiest place I've ever been to in my life. And they were telling us that they were trying to get approval for the peroxide to be used for their units to be used in the food preparation industry. And it all their stuff was, we felt better about, all the hors d'oeuvres they were serving and all this other stuff, because it felt like the whole place was sterile clean. So then I'm reading about the use of ozone and that kind of thing. And yeah, like I said, it's been like 24 years since the FDA approved that. But little things like the North Coast Seafood Company, they have they use ozone for their fish processing, and because they're doing that, they're indicating about a 50% increase in the shelf life of white fish. So,
wow,
you take fish home and it's a crapshoot. How many days, sometimes hours before it starts to stink?
Right.
But if they've already like zapped a bunch of the bacteria right off the bat just by exposing them to ozone gas, then so much the better. Kraft Foods, probably heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
They use it for the control of mold in the vestibule of the packaging room. And they have had an over 80% reduction in mold.
Wow.
Yep.
That's impressive.
That's pretty doggone impressive there. But yeah, stinky fish and mold definitely makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
So, like I kind of said before, safety considerations. I have this whole list of safety considerations here. Basically, don't breathe it like I did.
Yeah.
Breathing ozone is not recommended. Even though I don't exactly know how they would have treated tuberculosis and these other breathing things without you having to breathe it.
Right.
So, it's a question I may just dig a little deeper into just for personal knowledge there. But, yeah.
Maybe it's one of those trade-offs, like, those medicine commercials that you see online where it's like, oh yeah, this will help this, but you may die from using it.
It is a side effect of, your arm will fall off.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. But that's really ozone in a nutshell.
Learned a lot about ozone today.
Yeah, and we were wondering, what are we going to do this next show about? And we had some ideas, and then I came to the shop a few days ago, and I was like, smell my arm. And it hit me. I was like, we got to do this show on ozone.
Mm-hmm.
I got to understand why my arm smells. But that's why. So ozone is your friend. It's protecting the planet.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't say really explicitly is that the ozone that is created at ground level is not good. I didn't say that, but that's true.
Interesting.
Now, it's good, but it's not good. So it does, we've got VOC, volatile organic compounds, like paint, pesticides, stuff like that are forming gases. This stuff actually locks those things up and sanitizes. Unfortunately, it creates smog. Smog is bad. And ozone is heavier than air. The molecular weight is heavier than air, which means that if we make it here on the ground, we can't float it up there to help the ozone layer that's been eaten up. So it's not going to help us up there. So don't think that you can buy an ozone generator and help the environment, because it's probably not going to happen.
It's just going to float down.
It's just going to stay here on the ground, and use it for water treatment, but you really no way you can get it up there.
Yeah.
But that was everything that I wanted to cover here today.
Awesome.
Hope everybody learned something and had a little fun doing it. And yeah, we're all charged up. We got a whole bunch more topics, but please submit comments, suggestions on future things that you don't think we've covered well enough, or things that we haven't covered at all.
Here's a good place for them to do that.
They can go to, I think there's comments on the podcast. Maybe not. If you can't comment on the podcast, you can always go to ConnecticutRichmond.com. That's our local website here. And you can go ahead and put a comment in there. All of our stuff, if you found us on YouTube, I'm pretty sure that even the podcast, you have the ability to ask a question or a comment, and we actually try to review those constantly to make sure that we respond to anybody. Or you can give us a call. We just got a call today because of one of the YouTube videos from somebody in another state. You can call us at 877-60-WATER, and we will be glad to take care of you. Sometimes we got some weird things that nobody else carries that will get you out of a pinch.
Oh, yeah.
But hope you had fun. Stay warm, and we will catch you next time.